Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I am Bolton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man. We were going to do a white pill segment this week, but then news came up, and so we pushed the white pill segment to next week. We will get there eventually, folks. Don't worry.
Yeah, but this is regarding the tragedy that took place months ago in Nashville, where the shooter, the transgender shooter, went to a Christian school and shot, I believe, three children and three adults. And they had the manifesto, the shooter's journal, but they were intentionally not releasing it. And thanks to a great bit of investigative journalism by the team over with Stephen Crowder, it's since been released now. And despite the powers that be doing everything in their power to try and suppress it, it's been circulated far and wide, and it's been confirmed to have been genuine. And so now we're going to examine it about why this insane person committed such a terrible tragedy.
Which
Do you
is
have anything you want to
totally
say
different
before I
from
read it?
all of the times where unpopular demographics did tragedies. That's totally different somehow, according to the establishment.
See, let's see. I have a let's see, it's not a very good, not a very good one. Let me see. I'll This isn't a very good one. It's like a fragment of one, but it should give you the idea behind this. Uh, this one was written. It says on here February 3rd, 2023. Yeah, we might get kicked off of YouTube for this, but this isn't me saying this YouTube. I'm reporting on something that's breaking news. Uh, Kill those
F word
kids,
for gay people.
yeah, those crackers going to private fancy schools with those fancy khakis and sports backpacks. Like, first of all, I own khakis, so I don't know what they're talking about. With their daddies, Mustangs, and convertibles. Fuck you, little shits. I wish to. And then the image I had was cut off. I'm gonna try and find a different
Mhm.
one. But
Basically, where the bourgeois have things I don't, how dare they? So far.
she specifically says crackers, which, as I'm sure you know, is a
Yeah, is a pejorative for white people that comes from the Gaelic word crack, which meant jokes or a good time, and was originally used on Irish slaves and indentured servants that came over during the days of transportation. The thing that most
but
people will not tell you.
okay. I have the rest of the image. It says, "I wish to shoot you, weak ass dicks, with your mop yellow hair. Wanna end all you little crackers, bunch of little F's." You can say it. I won't.
Yeah, the F word for gay people that even I don't think I'm permitted to use, even though I am one. Because ever since
It's
Milo called himself the most dangerous one, everyone has flipped shit over it. So yeah. Even though Milo does now currently try to denounce his F wordness. But to be fair, Milo, my friend, no one is buying it. You are still as gay as Oscar Wilde ever was, sir.
let's see. With your white privileges, fuck you, F words. So this is not just a class thing, but it's also a racial thing, apparently, which is crazy to me because if you saw a picture of this individual, you know that they themselves are white.
Well, I mean, social justice conflates race and class and ideology so thoroughly that let's be honest, when most people think rich, they also think white. And yet somehow that is not racist, even though there are extremely wealthy black people, including Oprah and Obama, who have more money than either of us will ever see in our entire collective lifetimes. Like
Yes,
even
but
if you
this person also went to, I don't believe it was the same school that they went to, but they also went to a private Christian school. So wouldn't that put them in the same position as the people that they're now raging against?
yes, but you see, when I say the rich, I mean everyone richer than me, and whiter than me, and more privileged than me, don't you know? Even though all of those words could apply to me in any reasonable context. That's how this tends to work. Bernie Sanders calls out the millionaires and billionaires right up until he makes $1 million, and then all of a sudden it's just billionaires.
Now, here's one thing that it's just a trend that I've noticed that this person uh, identified themselves as transgender, and one pattern that I've noticed is that when they are white and either gay or trans, they will fully embrace their gay and trans identity and kind of use that to disassociate themselves with being white
Yeah,
because as I'm sure in their
it basically cancels out the privilege that I get from being white somehow.
yeah, so basically like in their ideology, like white people are seen as terrible oppressors of other underprivileged minority.
When they say white, they mean everything that goes along with it: white, cis, straight, and usually male as well.
Yeah,
Although
I
some
mean
of them will
those.
acknowledge that white women do in fact have it better than white men occasionally.
Yeah, I mean
It
those other
depends.
things aren't like the cis and male part aren't mentioned in here specifically, but that could absolutely be a part of it as well. But it's just like they use that to separate themselves so that they are no longer counted amongst the oppressors that their side is railing against.
Because then I'm one of the kings or one of the princes that has sympathy for the poor underclass, don't you know? Because I'm just like you, don't you know?
Yeah, and this anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-straight like rhetoric has been going on for like what almost 10 years now.
And probably a considerable time before that while it was still gestating in academia.
Yeah, so this person could have like spent like almost certainly spent all of their formative years just being inundated with this ideology. Hello there, Ed Brewer.
Hi, Ed.
But yeah, but this person probably spent their formative years just having their brains like filled with this. They went to a Christian school, so I don't know if it necessarily happened there, but if she, so I don't if they were if he was fuck it, I don't know what to call them because I've never
I
met.
think they is a decent compromise because then you don't have to acknowledge the pronoun change, but we also don't have to be dehumanizing little shits. So
Yeah, I also just don't know which way they were going. So they is all I can really go by.
whether they were biologically male and went trans woman, or whether they were biologically female and went man. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they is I think they is as good as we're gonna be able to do in this instance.
yeah. So they um you know were if they were involved in the online trans discussion boards, they like almost certainly heard a lot of that because like a lot of the online discussions regarding these types of topics can be like very ideological based, and like I've seen a lot of trans people online have a lot of hatred for people who are like straight white or cis.
Now, mind you, I have also met actual trans people in real life who are perfectly sane, perfectly rational, perfectly healthy. Obviously, apart from the trans thing, um, depending on which way you go on that, people and perfectly sensible people who do not seem to have hatred for anyone, as far as I could tell. But there, for every one of those, there are, shall we call it, politically or ideologically trans people who viscerally do believe basically everything that social justice tells them, and who, honestly, it seems, take out their self hatred on their alleged original demographic, I would imagine. Also, something to add here, for all that the establishment whines and moans and complains about Reddit and 4chan, and how stochastic terrorism is totally a thing, MK, and how radicalization is totally bad, MK, and how we need to protect the youth, MK. No one ever mentions Tumblr or any like quasi academic blogs on that list, do they? Even though shit like this happens. Not to mention every single member of Antifa. I would put money on the average Antifa member also being the average Tumblr user, or thereabouts. And if I am wrong, may I be struck to death by lightning in this exact incident.
So, that, what you just said about having met trans people in real life who were perfectly fine and nice and reasonable people. It just reminds me of that quote from Men in Black. A person is smart. People are dumb, dangerous,
Dumb,
physical
panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. Yes, I love that quote. It is the single truest thing that Tommy Lee Jones has ever been required to say in any movie ever.
Yeah. So like when you like if you're just encountering one person like on the street that you might find like a reasonable person, but when you get them all together online, it's just like it's I like to view it as like a centrifuge. Like it keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, and then the crap rises to the top.
Yeah, I will say the two examples that I can think of off the top of my head as far as, trans or trans adjacent people that I have met that have been perfectly reasonable. Um, One of them, she was actually usually the DM of our D&D group in college, and she was also an engineer. She was going for engineering. Her her chosen name was Maggie, and she was perfectly reasonable, even though she and I very often disagreed on petty shit. And another person that I've known and loved quite a lot in my time was a person who was usually in the same philosophy courses as I was. Um, I believe they identify as non-binary, and they either go by Nico, which was their, for lack of a better word, original name, or Fran. And I'm pretty sure they're okay with me using either. So yeah, I have met several trans or non-binary or whichever gender spectrum you want to use people who are perfectly sane and who, as far as I could tell, didn't believe most of the social justice nonsense. But there are also a lot of people who are trans frienders and they mostly believe in the social justice nonsense.
But getting back to the racial politics aspect of it all, like we have heard this rhetoric from teachers, from influencers, from pseudo intellectuals on YouTube and Twitter, from politicians. Like this has been like just fomenting through the culture like for years. And
Yeah, let's play a game. Vosh or Nancy Pelosi. Can you spot the difference between one of their random quotes?
look, and like when you're like just directing all of this hatred towards this group of people, like something like this was bound to happen.
And let's say you are a cis straight white male who is from a quote unquote privileged background and goes to a private school. and you're inundated regularly with white cis men are the scum of the earth, privileged white cis men are the worst of them all, etc., etc., and so on. Is it any wonder that you would have some self-hatred issues and some dysphoria issues after about 10 years of that in your formative years? It doesn't surprise me. And no, I'm not saying that every person who suffers dysphoria hates themselves or any of that nonsense either. I'm saying in cases like this one, it doesn't surprise me. Just like in Silence of the Lambs, even Lecter and Clarice make the distinction between legitimate transgender people and someone who just hates their own identity so much that they think they are transgender. And I'm willing to put this guy in the "it rubs the lotion on its skin" category because, well, it couldn't get more literal if it tried, could it?
So, as you mentioned before, people are always saying things like stochastic terrorism, like when like somebody has a criticism of like transgender ideology, or somebody criticizes Islam, or just like any other group that the left
You like Paul
holds.
Elam? You must be a terrorist in waiting. You like EA co-editing? You must be a terrorist in waiting. Yada yada freaking yada. But it's never you have bought into social justice hook, line, and sinker. You must be a terrorist in waiting. It's always anyone who's right wing, pseudo right wing, socialist, social democrat, but not in favor of social justice, etc. It does not matter what category you actually put yourself in or what category you actually meaningfully belong in based on like terms and definitions. If you can even remotely look populist right, then you are the devil unless we can prove otherwise. And if
And
you are a social justice adherent, you are an angel until mountains move to prove otherwise. And even then, we will probably try to obfuscate it as much as possible to avoid that realization.
they try to hold people who have opinions online as potentially being responsible for inciting people who commit potentially criminal acts. So would that make all of them now responsible for inciting this individual?
Well, it's even more ob- ob- it's even more oblique than that when you consider that they used in left wing circles, radical is often used as a compliment. Whereas whenever it's the other side of the horseshoe, it's always radicalization is the devil. Okay, it literally almost does boil down to our kind of radicalization good, your kind of radicalization the devil.
Yeah. Well, that's because like they view the other side not as incorrect, but as basically evil.
Yeah,
And the more
immoral.
radical you are, the more you're willing to do anything to defeat evil. And so if you're like say that you're a moderate, then that means you're not willing to go far enough just towards
Yeah,
the evil.
that means you're standing still on a moving train. That means you would leave slaves in shackles as long as you didn't hurt them. Yada yada yada. We've all heard it so many times; it's almost rote at this point. But that's the thing. When they say radicalization, they mean radically good, radically anti-establishment. But when they say radical in relation to their enemies, they always mean like one step away from a cult or worse.
Meanwhile, like it just always amazes me that they claim other people are in a cult when they have like the most cult-like behavior you can imagine, like cutting people off from their friends and
Instinction
family.
Rebellion, BLM,
Just Stop
BAMN,
Oil.
Just Stop Oil, Antifa, um, BreadTube. The list she goes on forever.
Did you
But
see that video that I tagged you in about Just Stop Oil using hammers to damage the glass case of a painting in, I believe, England?
God damn it. Every time they come after art, I want to do horrible things to them. I'm not going to do horrible things to them, and this is not a confession of any kind, but ye gods. does it make me want to go, I'm weighing the life of you versus the value, like, philosophically of that painting, and the painting is coming up winning, god damn it.
I
There
mean,
are times
not to.
where I feel like Dracula did nothing wrong
I
in
mean, when
the
you.
Castlevania anime.
I mean, some. I mean, something. Somebody broke down. I forget which podcast I heard this on, but like they said, okay, if we just stopped using oil today, millions of people are going to die.
Yep. Winter's a bitch. Heating is expensive. What you gonna do?
Not only that, but you mentioned like, okay, without oil, we're not going to generate enough power for all the things that we use today, and so like people who have diabetes and who need their insulin kept at a particular temperature, without power, that insulin's going to go bad and they're going to die.
How many dozens of people on life support are we going to lose because we can't use the sensible alternative to fossil fuels, which would be nuclear, and we can't get the eco-friendly ones to work fast enough. Therefore, we're just gonna have to downsize because my planet.
I mean, not only that, but we can't. But without diesel, you can't farm or transport enough, goods in order to feed everyone. So people are going to starve.
Well, okay, and here's another option. What exactly are we going to use instead of, like, many paints and many plastics and many polymers use oil or some kind of oil adjacent thing as a key ingredient. So what are we going to use instead of oil based paint or what have you? Because we can't go back to using lead paint, by which I mean I will gladly kill myself and anyone who tries to before I let people move to lead paint. But but yeah, what's the other alternative? The sane alternative to fossil fuels is nuclear energy. Well, we can't talk about nuclear energy because we're all so fucking scared of Chernobyl and that one time the one time the one in Japan got whacked with a tsunami. Even though it was literally an act of communism in the case of Chernobyl and an act of nature in the case of the Japanese one. And that's literally what you have to do to fuck up a nuclear power plant in this day and age. You either have to expose it to communism from the ground up, or you have to literally have nature whack it with a giant ass wall of water.
Now to get back to the main topic, let's talk about the establishment because by God, they came out in full force once this got leaked. Like Crowder, to his credit, did his best to spread this far and wide as he should to just make sure the information got out there, and it got taken down. Like Google tried to censor it by saying, "Yeah, this story is." They put a notice on whenever you try to search for it that said this story is rapidly changing. Here are some articles from some verified, reliable sources that you can read about on this subject.
By which I mean,
YouTube,
please
obviously,
believe us, we totally aren't the ones in the wrong or doing anything bad here. Yeah.
yeah.
It,
So
honestly, the
YouTube
very
took
notion
down
of
this video.
verification is null in my head at this point. I don't give a fuck what the establishment wants me to think. I care about what actually might be true.
Uh, YouTube took down his video, and I think it said that the reason they took it down was because the material that he was reading was reference to violent organized crime. Like Crowder was reading a mob confession.
Um, even if that were true, um, does nothing that gets distributed by Antifa count? Does nothing that gets distributed by Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion count? Does nothing that gets supported by BreadTube count? Vosh literally will call for political violence on a whim most of the time, to the point where even Destiny looks at him and goes, "You have lost your freaking mind." And yet that doesn't count. Nobody is censoring BreadTube, but Crowder does investigative journalism one time, and all of a sudden it's ridiculous.
So they took it down off Facebook as well. Took it down off of Instagram. But thankfully, Elon Musk allowed it to stay up on X, and I believe Rumble allowed his video to stay up on their platform.
Faith.
And then, yeah, extremely. And then once as you know, like Twitter is a massive platform, so once things started getting circulated on there, like the cat was out of the bag.
You can't stop the Elon.
But and like you can obviously you can see why they did their best to censor this to stop it from getting out, because the ideology that drove this person to kill these innocent people, like it's the stuff they have been
Was
espousing and
very
pushing.
obviously social justice or social justice adjacent shit. Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
as we
so
know, rule 1, 2, and 3 of the mainstream media are the people we like didn't do nothing. The people we like are the good people, and we will find a way to blame it on the people we don't like somehow.
like I think one of the best things that came about as a result of this thing being leaked is that now you can see like all the pieces of the machine that came out and tried to stop this. Like, congratulations, you have, like, we already knew who you were, but for like the average person, like, you have identified yourselves for exactly what you are.
Yep.
And
I
I
mean,
believe
the
like after
Israel Gaza thing, anyone?
that was a huge wake up for a lot of people, because my that drove so many people like absolutely insane.
Yep. Somehow the accusation of being a Nazi hits different when the entire group of people who call you a Nazi are the exact same people who actually want to deport Jews from the country.
Yeah. So I think another important thing that what came out roughly the same time is a report that the social media companies have basically been working hand in glove with the government. Like the government was like directing them to like silence things, and like it just wasn't things that were like false information. It was opinions. It was jokes. It was just like anything that could possibly get people to think in a way we don't like. Just squash it.
Yeah, again, giving credit where it's due, Elon being the town crier of the internet again.
It's just I I would love to be able to pinpoint exactly when this started, to just get like a timeline, a progression of how bad it is, of how bad we've gotten to here, because like I remember when YouTube, back before it was owned by Google, it was a great place. You could like people like it actually followed up on the message of broadcasting yourself, like put yourself up there, and like there was a lot of great, like, people weren't getting like as much fame or money on there, but they were definitely like more expressive and more creative, and like weren't shackled by this ridiculous terms of service that nobody can really understand because it varies based upon Google's whims.
We are altering the deal. We will be perpetually altering the deal. You may pray that we don't alter it any further, however, you will always be wrong to do that. Literally, Google is worse than Darth Vader in this instance.
So, so they were pushing this, disgusting, anti-white, anti-male, anti-Christian propaganda while suppressing anybody who pushed back against them. And then they like do the surprise Pikachu face when somebody actually takes their ideology to its most terrible conclusion and kills people. Like,
Well, it's just like when a piece of media takes their arguments to it to their logical conclusion, and they usually end up not liking it. Like, remember Daniel Kibble-Smith's New Warriors, or remember how Velma was totally a right-wing psyop? Trust us, it wasn't someone taking our gospel as read and just producing the end result of it.
That new Warriors book was just it was the best unintentional comedy since America Chavez.
I think in some ways it might have America beat, because at least America wasn't called Brown Girl, whereas Snowflake and Safe Space were literally called Snowflake and Safe Space.
Like, well, literally be me creating a superhero called N-Word Man.
Which reminds me, have you seen the most recent the trailer for the Marvels, where Nick Fury tells Monica Rambeau to access her black girl magic? And I feel sorry for you on the behalf of all white people.
I have not seen it because I have no interest in that film whatsoever.
I have
Like it's
anti-interest. I want to see it. I want to see it crash and burn so I can enjoy the Schadenfreude. Like, that's where I'm at with it.
like it's gonna do so terribly. Like a bunch of characters that no one actually likes, except for maybe Monica Rambeau, but they've done her so horribly that nobody likes
Yeah,
her
but
either in the cinematic universe.
here's the breakdown. Carol Danvers, no one liked. Even though people saw her original movie, no one likes her. Monica, people did like her right up until the end of WandaVision, when she let Wanda off scot-free instead of chasing her down like Thaddeus Ross does for the Hulk, or like Commissioner Gordon pretended to do at the end of The Dark Knight with Batman. But no, she lets Wanda off with a warning. Then you have Kamala Khan, who seems mostly inoffensive, but at the same time, no one watched her show or has any intention to. And they way over focused on the fact that she's Muslim. Can't imagine that's going to go over all that well at this particular juncture in history, but whatever. Um, and Nick Fury used to be the badass to end all badasses, but between his first appearance in Captain Marvel and what they did to him in Secret Invasion, there is literally no reason why anyone would even feign to give a shit about the Marvels. None.
I mean,
Yet.
Kamala Khan was a subpar character in the comics as well.
And all things considered, I think the MCU fixed her a little bit. I know what few Kamala Khan fans there are dislike that they altered her powers, but I honestly think her energy-based powers fit her better rather than just making her rip off Mr. Fantastic. But then they went ahead and made her the first mutant in the MCU in defiance of the fact that, X-Men fans are going to burn things because of that.
Oh,
And
did you
also, never mind
did you
that
not
she was
see?
the first Jinn we saw in the MCU, and yet she's a mutant Jinn, so we don't even know what a normal Jinn is like now. Because world building fail.
Did you see that they're making a mutant in the comics as well? She's joining the X-Men.
Even though she was just fine as an Inhuman from not 5 seconds ago.
Well, yes. Well, you got to push that corporate synergy, dome.
Well, but here's the thing. They established that Black Bolt can hypothetically exist in the MCU in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So, frankly, at some point, we probably should get back to the Inhumans. But whatever. And do them right this time, and don't skimp on the budget. Cough, cough, Scott Buck. But, back on point. We went off on a tangent there. You realize,
Yeah.
of course, we're probably going to have to review that movie for the sake of the channel at some point.
The Marvels.
Yeah.
Possibly, but I think one of the reasons that they gave for not releasing the manifesto is because they were afraid of copycat shooters. People being inspired and going out and doing something wrong. But like they never were afraid of that when they released all those other manifestos.
That never factors into when they release Anders Breivik's manifesto or Elliot Rogers' manifesto, or again, it's literally oh, someone we don't like did something bad, mainline that into my veins so we can feel morally superior. Someone I like or am obliged to defend did something bad, shh, we mustn't taint people's impressions of the people we like. Because the people we like didn't do nothing, and the people we don't like are the devil. Don't you know?
I mean, I think one of the most frightening things about this is that this isn't going to get them to stop.
Nope. This is only the beginning.
They have
Just
like
like just
full.
like the detransitioning phenomena isn't going to stop anytime soon either. It's going to continue, and it's going to be viewed in exactly the same tragic way that the Satanic Panic and all the false memory implantations were viewed back in the day.
So, like you, look, I think one interesting thing that needs to be talked about is that I believe, at least I heard somewhere that this person, when they were going to do the shooting, they originally were going to go to the school that they had gone to, but it was too heavily guarded, and so they went to a school with less security, and then shut them.
So if we can, for the sake of this argument, equate guards to privilege, like the number of guards and the amount of privilege go up proportionately, can we then conclude that whoever this person is comes from a more privileged background than the people that they shot up? Because that would seem to be the implication there, because people who are actually privileged don't tend to skimp when it comes to spending money on guards, generally. They
I
might
think it
be as
also.
anti-gun as you could imagine, but surprise, freaking surprise, they don't mind having a small army's worth of armed guards around them at every conceivable turn.
I think this is reinforced. Like, there were some people who were saying that, oh, they might have been bullied at the school. They might have you know been made fun of, whatever. But I think the fact that they didn't do it at their original school, like in spite of the security, is goes to show the fact that this wasn't truly personal and it was purely ideological. Because it was, if it was truly personal, they would have gone to the school. Security be damned.
Okay, yeah, but even if it were somehow personal, let's take that as a given for the sake of the argument. Why is it that Elliot Rodger being bullied was never an excuse for why Elliot Rodger did the things he did? Why was it that Anders Breivik's mom abused him was never an excuse for what he did? Like in every other instance, the fact that the school shooter is inevitably the kid who basically was that school's version of Carrie White, from obviously from Stephen King's novel Carrie, if anyone didn't get the reference. But why is it that it's always, no matter hell or high water, the school's Carrie or the school's Meg from Family Guy that winds up being the school shooter, but never is that used in the shooter's defense, except now, because reasons. Because the people we like didn't do nothing, and the people we don't like are responsible for literally everything bad that's happened since the dawn of humanity, or so we say, or so we are obliged to say, or we will get our funding cut.
I think it just seems to me that, like, this ideology allows people who may be feeling, put down or weak, to wallow in that weakness and let it fester until they eventually snap and do something terrible, instead of
Well,
doing what I think would be the appropriate thing. That's to improve yourself, make yourself, stronger and better. And then when they try to, say, pick on you, you stand up to them and show you that you're not just gonna take it, and then it stops.
yeah, it's victimhood as moral power, basically. The fact that I'm put upon makes me better than you is usually how the argument goes. And to some extent, okay, I can give a little bit of wiggle room there because it usually is the person who is weird and unusual that does get picked on to some extent. But the fact that you're a victim isn't what makes you great. The fact that you can withstand that victimization and not let it get to you is what makes great people out of victims. I.e., what makes you a better person than your tormentors is not when you eventually break. It's how hard you can get hit, metaphorically speaking, and still get back up again.
And I think it's the rhetoric they also use on the people they that bully them, the way that they view them. They don't view them as just that guy's just that guy's just an asshole at school. Like, and I don't have to let it bother me too much. And it turns to that person is irredeemably evil and should ultimately be destroyed.
Yeah. Every violent sociopath ever, every school shooter, every person like that always goes down the route of the world is it's like the Death Note line. The world is rotten and someone has to put it right, and no one is going to do that, so I'll do it myself. And then away we go with that.
And one of the most disgusting things about this whole tragedy is the way that people were talking about it, like almost immediately after it happened, claiming that there were seven victims because they were counting the shooter who died as one of the victims because they were transgender. Like, you absolute fucking scumbags.
Even though no one counts the shooter in any other instance, even though Elliot Rodger killed 4 men, 2 women, and himself, so 5 men in total, it's still considered a misogynistic crime and not a misanthropic crime, or God forbid a misandrist crime because he killed more men, especially if you include him.
Yeah, I mean, like, you have got to be like one of the lowest scumbags on the earth to take an incident where children were shot and then advocate on behalf of the shooter.
Yeah,
Like,
you
there was
use
something
it as an
deeply disturbing
ideological
you.
weapon, period. Yeah.
Ugh.
But this is what they always do. Whether the shooter is someone they do like or someone they don't like, they will always, without fail, use it as an ideological weapon. This just goes to prove how bad the people we don't like are, or this just goes to prove how victimized the people we do like are. Round and around it goes.
Yeah. And it just seems like there is no like endpoint in this ideology. Like, there is no point where they will reach where they will just stop. It just seems to just go on and on and on, further and further into hell.
Yeah, no, it's the problem with it's the problem when you conflate your politics with your morality. Whenever anyone does that, you will find a system where there will never be an end point. They will never be happy unless the world that they don't like is in flames, or they have finally reached their golden utopia. And as we all know, how often do they actually reach the golden utopia? Somewhere on this side of never. But how often do they inevitably burn down the world they don't like in the process of trying to get to that utopia? Almost as good as all the time.
It's not an like when it comes to morals. Like, I will like vote according to logic and my morals, and I will behave according to my morals. But I'm not going to just like demand that everybody else adheres to what I believe in. But these people, like, they don't care how they behave so long as everyone else bends to their will.
Well, yeah, it's morality as extrinsic versus morality as intrinsic. I think you and I are on roughly the same page of if you're going to hold the world to a standard, you need to live up to that standard first, and then your morality can move outward from there. These people go the other way around, where only when the world is perfect, only when I have everything I want, only when everything is secure in the way I want it exactly, do I then have any obligation to behave like a moral person. Their morality comes outside in versus inside out, and it always leads to authoritarianism. And honestly, if you want my opinion, it doesn't matter which side of politics you're on, it doesn't matter which side of morality you're on. This kind of moral authoritarianism always comes from fear. The idea that the world is fallen, the idea that the world is corrupt, the idea that the world is nihilistic, the world is miserable, and that only through my one perspective can anyone ever possibly be redeemed? So I now need to go and nail everything in the world into place exactly the way I want it, because only then will the world ever be good. The idea that the world is not at least partially good enough to begin with never enters their minds, and the idea that you can get to a good world with any means but theirs also never enters their minds. That's why the Karens and the Helen Lovejoys are so mirror universe similar, because they both it's a fear response. It's the world scares me, the world is bad, so I'm going to force the world to be good, and anyone who gets in my way is just another excuse another example of the world being bad. And therefore I as the good person can purge them all I like so that the world will be better or that the world will be good. It's
Yeah, well, I think
goddamn
the one
terrifying.
difference between these, I think the one major difference between these people and the Christian satanic panic is that, regarding their actions and the limits that they go to, like Christians know that they are accountable to God. These people, I don't think they are accountable to anyone. Like they have no one that they would consider above them that would sit in judgment of their actions.
One asterisk I will put there is very often, with especially the authoritarian varieties of evangelicals, God agrees with everything I say, so if you disagree with me, you're disagreeing with God by definition. So
Uh,
there is there is at least a method of mental gymnastics that will lead them to roughly the same place. It might be a microcosm less common, so maybe you have a point, but I'm just saying part of the reason why the Satanic Panic didn't get as bad as the SJWs are getting is because when the Satanic Panic happened, that was the last gasp of Christian hypermoralism. Whereas what we are experiencing now are the first inroads of social justice moralism. But if you look back about 500 years to the burning times, that is what it looks like when Christian moralism is in its prime, which leads us to the question of, if this is just the beginning of social justice moralism, where the fuck will we be in 500 years? And
I
by
mean,
we, of
hopefully
course,
it
I mean
never.
humanity.
I mean, hopefully it never gets that far because it really does seem that people are just like they're awake now and they are fed up.
Yeah, I hope it turns into we don't need either of you instead of constantly oscillating between one or the other. Because most some people would call me naive, but I don't think humanity needs a big brother standing over their shoulder to be good. I think most people will average out somewhere in the middle. Neither perfectly good or perfectly evil, but they will average out somewhere in the middle. And that somewhere in the middle will still be better than where either of these nihilistic fucks think we end up without their personal big brother standing over everyone's shoulder, or at least
You know,
doing
a
so in
song.
theory.
A song just came to mind that is appropriate for both eras of overbearing morality. It's "We're Not Gonna Take It" by Twisted Sister.
Hmm. Yeah. If only. If only. That's why I miss the 90s irreverence, because there was a time when Christian hypermoralism was dying, and political correctness as it exists now was barely a twinkle in anyone's eye as yet. And in that time, it was very nearly a golden age. And I really want to get back there. I really do. I want to get back to the world where no one gets to publicly proclaim the world needs to revolve around morality. But I worry that it's just going to be a constant oscillating between the two instead. Because I thought we had won at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, and then the SJW showed up. And I could see a world not too distant from here where instead of Jack Thompson or Pat Robertson, it's Matt Walsh banning anime and uh, and Gavin McGinnis trying to ban video games and comics and what have you. And I don't want that world either. Just because I
None
hate
of
the
those things are
SJWs doesn't make the traditionalists any more palatable to me.
none of those things are going to happen. Like there are too many people who would consider themselves conservatives, myself included, who like anime. So like that is Walsh's like wild fever dream.
Yeah, I know. I worry. How much further can the SJWs go before a bunch of people are like, well, the traditionalists are more palatable now because reasons. And again, I hope
Well,
that
here's the thing, like
we'll get to the point of how about neither? How about no to both of you? But
a lot of the
I
people who
worry.
are a lot of people who are conservative commentators now, like they grew up with things like Toonami, like watching Dragon Ball and Gundam. And the thing is though, now the you know SJW is like they're starting to piss off the anime creators.
Yeah. And I will stand by them just like I did back in the day when people said D&D was satanic. I said, one, no, two, that you're just making it more appealing. So hopefully that good old fashioned like 90s era irreverence will win the day. I just really hope we don't have to do this again in another 20 years, but with whoever is the successor to like Matt Walsh and Gavin McGinnis instead of Anita Sarkeesian and company. I'd love to live in a world where we didn't have to have this fight again in another 20 years, but it is a constant worry in the back of my mind. Fortunately, I think most people on the right these days are more on the libertarian side rather than the evangelical side. But
Yeah,
there's still that little irrational worry of, you thought you won back in the day before the SJW showed up, remember? And now here we are.
I don't think it's ever going to go back to that. Like
I hope.
a lot of
And
a lot of a lot of
if it does
Christians are
start
pretty
trending that way, I will be the first to sound the alarm. Don't anyone worry, but I I just I worry about the more things change, the more they stay the same factor.
like just from my perspective, you would find a lot more like Christian libertarians with some conservative leanings than like authoritarian conservative Christians, at least from my experience nowadays.
Yeah, and I agree. I do find a lot more libertarians on the right than I do any other kind of right winger. There are a couple people like Matt Walsh when he talks about anime, or like Gavin McGinnis when he talks about video games and comics, that I'm just like, are we about to do this again? Are we really about to do this whole thing all over again, but with the sides flipped again?
Yeah, when like there are many things that I agree with Walsh on, but like anime and video games is like definitely not one of them. Like when Walsh says that he didn't grow up playing video games, I'm like, dude, that makes you the weird one.
Yeah, no, that makes you the person probably nobody liked enough to have over to play video games, or the one too sheltered for their parents to buy them video games. Which you have my sympathies. That's not an easy place to be in, but you will come for my preferred form of art and my preferred form of entertainment over my dead body, just like the SJWs.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, like even though that's what he may believe, I don't think that he actually has the will to actually force it down other people's throats.
No, but then again, back in the day, before the alt right separated from the skeptosphere, we we all were like no identity politics, and then Richard Spencer and company went, well, sure, no identity politics in theory, but in actuality, identity politics for our team. And there are at least a few traditionalist conservatives who I think advocate for freedom now because they're not the ones in the power seat, but they might change their tune when they are in the power seat. I just don't want to get there again, is all I'm saying. I want a world with no authoritarian moralism, not a world where we change the flavor of authoritarian moralism every 20 years or so.
Yeah, and I think really that goes to show the biggest difference between the left and the right in modern day, because the alt right is basically gone.
Yeah, they're a childish joke, and I hope they always remain a childish joke.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the radicals on the left have just basically like metastasized and like spread like a cancer to
Yeah, no,
basically like the entire party.
they had 1 nanometer and they took a whole palace. So yeah, I don't get me wrong. For the foreseeable future, I am going to be battling the SJWs with everything I have. But my principles dictate nobody gets the moral high ground. Nobody gets to morally lecture people on what they may do in the public sphere. In the private sphere, that is a different matter. But in the public sphere, it's better, I think, for everyone to be as libertarian and hands off as possible. So I will be sticking to that principle. And if that requires me to aim at both sides on occasion, I will do so.
So we haven't been going for quite an hour, but I think I've said all I have to say. What about you?
Yeah, same. I think we drifted off the topic as well a couple of times.
All right, so I'm gonna end it here. I've been Mystery.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.